Okay, good morning, members of the board. My name is Brian Pessaro, principal planner. I'm also the TBARTA project manager of the RRT study. I believe Scott Pringle from WSP is also on the line with me today. This morning, I'm just going to give a brief recap of the presentation that Scott gave last month. This is an action item. We're taking board approval on the locally preferred alternative. The slide you see here, you've seen it many times before. It's the RRT purpose, and that is all day modern mobility that provides quick, safe, reliable, frequent, and regional rapid service. So we have reached the next milestone in the study, milestone 3, which is the selection of the locally preferred alternative. You will recall that we started with 5 design alternatives. At the June board meeting, you narrowed that down to 3. So what we're asking for today is that you narrow it down to 1. And what we will do with that is we will advance that alternative into 30% design and complete the environmental analysis for. Next slide. Locally preferred alternative for the RT, it has 2 parts. There's the alignment and then there's the stations. The Federal Transit Administration, they request transit agencies to select the locally preferred alternative before they launch into the environmental analysis. Next slide. These were the 3 alternatives that you approved back in June. So alternative 1 is express bus for the 41-mile route. It would operate in mixed traffic, but it would have access to the shoulders to bypass points of congestion, what we call bustle and shoulder operations. The other 2 alternatives, 3 and 5, everything that you see in purple on the maps for alternatives 3 and 5, that is what we call freeway-based dedicated BRT lanes. The only difference between alternative 3 and 5 is the Howard Franklin Bridge. For alternative 3, the RRT would operate in tolled express lanes. For alternative 5, it would have its own dedicated lane across the Howard Franklin Bridge. Next slide. This slide compares the performance of the 3 alternatives. So going from top to bottom, it shows the number of miles of dedicated BRT lanes for the 41-mile corridor, the forecasted daily ridership, the average travel time from Pasco to downtown Tampa, as well as the average travel time from downtown St. Pete to Tampa. Really what it came down to is which one of these alternatives is going to be competitive for FTA funding. Alternative 1 does not meet the FTA's criteria for what they call fixed guideway BRT. It's doubtful whether it would even meet the criteria for what they consider corridor-based BRT. So it would not be eligible. We do not think alternative 1 would be eligible for the CIG program. Alternative 5, along with alternative 5 is the cost of adding a dedicated lane for the RRT across the Howard Franklin Bridge would add approximately another $300 million on top of the project cost. That really knocks alternative 5 out of contention for what FTA considers a competitive project. And for that reason, that is why staff is recommending that we move forward with alternative 3 as the LPA and advance that to the next stage of the project. Next slide. This is a description of alternative 3. So again, it has dedicated freeway BRT lanes in all 3 counties for about 31 of the 41-mile routes. We'll use the express lanes across the Howard Franklin Bridge, and we'll have significant investment in the stations. There's 13 stations total. Of those 13, 5 are intermodal centers that are being funded by FDOT. There are only 2 stations of the 13 that we are planning to be what are called in-line, meaning in the interstate. That is the station at West Shore and the station at Bird Street and Waters Avenue. The remaining 11 stations will all be offline or off of the interstate. Next slide. The median cost of alternative 3 is $353 million. That has come down. When we began the RRT study, we were closer to $455 million. So as we've done more preliminary engineering and gotten more details, the costs have come down. This slide shows the breakdown of those costs. So 27% of the $353 million would go to the stations. So here, we're making sure that the stations have all the amenities that the public and what FTA expects to see associated with premium transit. Only 2% would be for parking, 39% would be for infrastructure, and a large chunk of that 39% is really in the West Shore to downtown Tampa segment, where instead of right side running, the RRT would be actually running in the median in the transit envelope. 8% for the vehicle fleet and 24% for project reserves. Next slide. We've been working closely with the team from TB Next, and we've come up with what we think is an appropriate phasing schedule, where phase 1 would be from downtown Tampa from Pasco to downtown Tampa, phase 2 from downtown Tampa to West Shore, and phase 3 from West Shore to downtown St. Petersburg. The RT project is closely linked with the construction schedule of TB Next. And in fact, the RT is going to have to follow the lead of the TB Next construction schedule. Based on the latest information that we have now on that schedule, we are looking at 10 years out for when the earliest start of service would be. And that would be that's for phase 1. Next slide. So in regards to next steps, we have met with FTA. In fact, we've met with them twice. FTA has, because of the expected delays in the TB Next construction schedule, they have strongly encouraged us to hold off on requesting entry into the capital investment grant program. However, they strongly encouraged us to complete the environmental analysis of the RT so that it can be what's considered shovel-worthy. That's the latest buzzword in DC, to be shovel-worthy for any stimulus money that might come down the pipe. So with that being said, staff's recommendation, we are seeking approval of alternative 3 as the locally preferred alternative. That will do 2 things. That will authorize WSP to complete the environmental analysis that's required under NEPA, and it will also authorize them to complete the 30% design. Like I said, if there's any questions, either myself or Scott Pringle, who's on the line, will be happy to try and answer any questions you have.
Members, questions for either Scott or Brian?
Sure. It's Commissioner Kemp.
Well, I recognize Rich McLean first, and then.
Oh, sorry, I can't always hear everything for some reason.
Right. Thank you. And good morning, Commissioner Kemp. Brian, my question to you, and it might be a loaded question. You know, as we've watched this develop through the last year or so, the one thing in the back of my mind has always been county support. And of course, this goes through 3 major counties, Pasco, Hillsborough, and then of course, Pinellas, and all. And so my question to you is there county support? Because I believe without firm county support, this project would basically sit on the shelf. And so it is a loaded question. You know, I'm under the belief that we probably don't have firm county support from Hillsborough County. And without that, again, I would say that this project, whatever we come up with, which would be option 3, would probably be dead on the table. And then my second question to you, of course, is the Express Bus program. This is something that Commissioner Kemp has mentioned in the past as an alternative, I believe, and I don't want to speak for her, but I believe that's what she said. And is there merit in relooking that? I know we have some time. This is not a hurried up project, but I know we have some time. Is there merit to look at that? So 2 questions.
Okay. In regards to the first question, unfortunately, I can't really answer since I personally have not met with elected representatives from the 3 counties. I've only met with people on the staff level. I can only share what I hear at the TBARTA meetings from the opinions expressed by the board members. In regards to the Express Bus option, I mean, that is one of the 3 alternatives that are up for discussion, and that if the board so wishes, that could be, I mean, there's nothing to stop the board from selecting alternative 1 as the LPA. It does get back to the fact that it would definitely not qualify for fixed guideway transit in FTA's eyes, and I think it's even questionable whether it would qualify as corridor-based BRT in FTA's eyes, because just to explain the difference between the 2. Fixed way guideway BRT in FTA's eyes, that means that the route more than 50% of the route has to be in its own dedicated lane. That's what they consider fixed guideway BRT for the capital investment grant program. But they also have this other category called corridor-based BRT. You don't have to meet that 50% requirement, but FTA is still expecting that there be a significant investment in the corridor. They are looking, because the expectation is that the service will emulate rail-like service. So they are looking for things like defined stations, faster service. So they're going to be looking for things like transit signal priority or queue jumps, branding. They're looking for branding of the route, frequent service. And in FTA's eyes, that means either 15-minute service all day or 10-minute service during the peak. We wanted alternative one, I don't know if alternative one as it currently looks would even qualify for that. But if it's the board's desire to go with alternative one, we could look at trying to come up with some sort of hybrid that gets us a little bit more than just express bus.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Kemp is up first and then Commissioner Long. And then Mayor Kreisman. Commissioner Kemp, you're recognized.
Well, thank you, Director McLean. I agree. I think that's true that there's not support for 3 in Hillsborough County. And yes, I have many times said with regards to the express bus. Now, I just want to ask this. I would ask not only the county, but, if their representatives in Congress are in support of these as well, because I think, that's also a no-go. But when you talk about FTA funding for this, if it were express bus, and then you talk about, the corridor funding program, what's the significance of that? Why, first kind of we've blown up this into these stations and what the system. Then you're saying we'd have to do 15-minute service on the expressways or in the interstate. But what's the significance of the corridor funding?
The significance, if we're not eligible to compete for funding through the capital investment grant program, then really the only way you would fund it would be the way you would fund any other transit route, which is the standard 5307 funds that transit agencies receive.
Right, but or it could be funded if, in terms of what they fund the express bus service in Miami-Dade, in Broward, and in Palm Beach counties. They fund those express bus services that are quite a lot more than us. They as well fund the CSX-like Tri-Rail for $50 million a year there without an agency like TBARTA. They also are funding Sunrail for 7 years. I know that that's ongoing. There's other, so why, those are a direct funding out of the state making a commitment to transit. So I'm not quite getting why we're not looking at that the same way that those other regions are.
Yeah, a lot of people want to comment, so I'm going to first recognize Commissioner Long, and then the mayor, I think Rich, and then I have some questions and comments too along these whole lines. So
Right, I'll have more that I want to say also.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, let's let Commissioner respond now. Commissioner Long respond now, and then take this in turn, because obviously we're getting to a point of issue here that's concerning to everyone.
Yes, so I think my comments might satisfy Commissioner McLean's. We often think alike, I find him and I, and it may also satisfy your concerns, Commissioner Kemp, if you are open to them. I listened very closely at our last meeting down in Manatee when Commissioner Kemp spoke, and her objections to the regional rapid transit plan that we've been talking about. So I'd like to highlight, Mr. Chair, if you would allow me, 3 comments that she made and provide you my research on the issue in response, which aligns a little bit with what Commissioner McLean has been talking about. Commissioner Kemp said, these are her words, "It doesn't make any sense as a regional project because it doesn't have regional stops and it's not fashioned that way." My response is the regional transit is actually the only premium transit project in development that has regional stops and connects the 3 major counties in our metro area. Its intermodal stations represent the region's major activity centers, highlight activity centers: Wesley Chapel, USF, downtown Tampa, West Shore, Gateway, and downtown St. Petersburg, plus several other stops that provide essential access to regional transit for residents of the 3 counties. This project is like commuter rail, but it's on rubber tires. Number two, this is Commissioner Kemp's comment at our meeting. It all goes along our own transit lines already in Hillsborough County. We're looking at Florida Avenue for our own BRT that I would certainly hope would be submitted first before 10 years. And for Nebraska Avenue on the other side. Then they have local stops along 275 north of downtown where somebody should get on that just to take it downtown and change seats when we already have a bus that does that as one of our top routes. The project doesn't make any sense to me still as it's done. Here's my response. This objection completely misses the point of the regional rapid transit and how it complements and reinforces local premium transit, such as, Mayor Kreisman, the Sunrunner in downtown St. Pete, or the arterial BRT that is planned for Nebraska, for Florida and Nebraska avenues in Tampa. People who live along the arterial BRT route or who can access it by bus can take the BRT to the RRT, sorry for all the acronyms, and then be in Wesley Chapel, West Shore, Gateway, or downtown St. Pete. Another example, someone who lives on Nebraska, Florida, arterial BRT would likely use that BRT to travel downtown Tampa or USF, which are stops on the BRT line. The RRT serves a different customer, wanting to reach different destinations in the region as it expands the ridership of HART, as well as the transit systems in Pinellas and Pasco, by providing more places to reach at a further distance. The purpose of the RRT is to make it as easy as possible for our citizens to access jobs, education, healthcare, and other activities throughout the region, not just in Hillsborough County. The third and last comment that I want to reference that Commissioner Kemp made is this. I think that the reasonable thing and the thing that would be right and serve the most people and make the most sense still would be to take express buses, to not have them paid for locally, since they would be running between counties, and to run an express bus from Pasco to Tampa to St. Pete, to the airports or whatever else you want to do. But with a regional route like that, not with a bunch of stops that are already being done with intentions to have BRT at street grade level with our top routes in Hillsborough County. In 2015, the original study that I had seen had recommended that. It was always in there. And I didn't see it until I started looking at it myself. And it would have been paid for by the state. Here's my response to that. Get ready, Commissioner Kemp. I think you might like this. While an express bus project won't accomplish the same level of reliability and speed as the regional rapid transit, I do believe that Commissioner Kemp raises a good point. I wonder if we should, to be totally thorough, include an update of the 2015 plan as one of the alternatives that we would consider. One of the principles that we should pursue as a board of TBARTA is to seek consensus when possible. And this might be one time when we can all reach consensus with Commissioner Kemp. I would be curious to see how an express bus system running in express lanes would compare to the regional rapid transit in terms of cost and ridership, and what it might offer in terms of frequency, reliability, and running time between stations. With that all said, I know it's a lot, but I would like to make a motion to ask TBARTA staff and project team to develop one additional alternative or consideration, namely an update of the 2015 plan that proposed express buses running in express lanes and connecting the 3 counties of Pasco, Hillsborough, and Pinellas. And don't worry, Commissioner Bellamy, we'll get down to Manatee as well. My intention here is to delay our scheduled vote today until this alternative could be considered alongside the others currently under consideration. And to Commissioner Kemp's point, I do not believe that we have a consensus among our federal delegation for the other options that we are proposing here. So let's try to work to build that so we can continue moving forward.
Yeah,
Thank you.
before I entertain the motion, I'm going to let everyone speak because this is a very salient conversation, and then we'll do that. And Mayor, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And following up on the commissioner's comments, I would ask if, when we're looking at that, I would be interested in knowing what is the convertibility of it down the road? If that's the direction that we go, can it then be converted down the road if it proves to be incredibly successful to what we originally were contemplating with alternative 3? And then the second question is does this potential alternative that the commissioner spoke of, would that then qualify at all for FTA? And if it doesn't, what's the impact on the budget of looking at solely state funding and other local funding, especially given that we are all concerned about losing the funding for the interchange for a couple of years?
Okay, that said, I wanted to comment. Oh, yeah, yes, please go ahead.
Rules of order, there needs to be a second to the motion because the motion has been placed on the floor for purposes of discussion. Okay, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, just want to make you aware that Secretary Gwynn would also like the floor.
Okay, let me, I'll make some comments now because I was going in order here, and then we'll defer to Secretary Gwynn on that. And a lot I've heard here suggests there is not a overall overriding consensus here. And to Commissioner Kemp's point, I personally would like to know too exactly where our congressional legislative delegation falls in line with this. And again, I have not talked to her personally. I do not believe that Congresswoman Castor supports this particular alignment. I don't believe she supports the project in general. I don't know where Congressman Christ is on that, nor do I know where Congressman Villarakas is. So I think before we can make any kind of rational and reasonable choices here, we need to have a weigh-in from our Congress folks on that, to Rich's point, because I'm sensing there is a groundswell in Hillsborough County, which is the largest member county of this board, that they do not want to see this project as it is clearly articulated now move forward. And we need to flush that out very much in the open and have a dialogue about that. And to that point, I think there's other options on the table here, so we should consider, what those are. And I would support this motion to defer consideration until we can do that. Other members, Secretary Gwynn, do you wish to make some comments?
Thank you. Just briefly, I wanted to just, because it was brought up in reference to, I believe they were referring to Sunrail and to Tri-Rail and the state's involvement in that. Just want to remind the statute that allows us to do that type of project in Sunrail and Tri-Rail is in statute, but it is only for commuter rail. So the statute would have to be changed if it was going to be applied to a bus rapid transit or regional rapid transit type project and still have that same type of a approach from the state. And then, of course, we'd need to get approval of the legislature, because on the other two projects, they certainly even had special sessions of the legislature to set that up to make sure that the funding was there. But no matter what project we pursue, if it's going to be something that goes to FTA for potential funding, which we would need to have if we're going to go with the state match, we will need to have consensus among the entities that would participate in either the operations or funding of those. So that's still something that we need to try to get for whatever we push forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Kemp, do you have any further comments to make on this?
Well, I'll just say there's been a big shift. I wish we could have gotten in this conversation like 3 years ago, but this is a big change. I would like to just let everyone know, we do have express buses in Hillsborough County running in those areas. And we have them, that's what, this RRT is no longer a one-seat ride, which it was originally set. There was this for a year, everybody saying, oh, we have to serve everybody going from St. Pete to Wesley Chapel in a one-seat ride, which never made any sense. That suddenly disappeared. In Hillsborough County, we do have express buses going from Wesley Chapel to downtown, which is just what this says that this will do already. We also have, which actually our county is totally subsidizing without help from Pasco at this time. We have had buses running for 3 years, 12 times a day, from downtown St. Pete to Gateway in St. Pete, across the Gandy Bridge to Britton Plaza to downtown Tampa. It did it in the same speed that these are purported to do. These express buses you're suggesting, we had it 12 times a day for 3 years. And I was kind of surprised when I looked over it, and I'm speaking from memory here, from the prime year, because the ridership went down from 2017 to 2018 to 2019, even though we ran it 12 times a day, which is pretty substantial. And it got about, in 2017, its prime year, about an average of 9 riders per bus all day long. And I'm sure it was subsidized, and I haven't been able to get this information out, but it was probably cost about $30 or so per trip, per rider of subsidy to help that. I was rather surprised. I think the ridership was something like, for the entire year, 12 times a day, about 45,000 or so on the biggest year. And when I saw the ferry service, which was just evenings and weekends and cost more and ran for 6 months, sometimes with issues, like no Sunday night service for a while, we actually had something like 55,000 riders in a year with much less service in 6 months on one ferry than we did with buses going 12 times a day between downtown Tampa and St. Pete, which I think was to me, that's a good express route, to just stop at a Gateway, go across Gandy, stop it at Britton Plaza, and go to Tampa. To me, that was a good premium service. And I say premium in terms of frequency for a region. It wasn't being used that substantially, which is true across the nation generally for these long-term express routes, or they never get the ridership anywhere that the usual heavy-duty local street routes get. They're just not high ridership routes in general. The second, I would just say this: I've tried forever to ask that if this route is so important between downtown St. Pete and the airport, why in the world can't we ever seem to get one? Why is a bus not doing that? I've asked about it repeatedly. It was said repeatedly it was going to happen. It has, to my knowledge, still never happened. They do have a bus from the beaches to the airport that had even lower ridership than the one I just mentioned, because I looked at that for 3 years as well. And to me, if this is a crying need, and this is what the express bus or even the RRT would do, because it was no longer going to be a 1-seat ride, it was going to be like a 3-seat ride. Why wouldn't we just be doing that? What I'm trying to say is Hillsborough County is already doing all these things that we're talking about here as express routes between major centers and doing it. We're doing that service, but I can't see that St. Pete is, and at this time, Pasco is, as I said, not contributing to that express bus, but we're hitting all the things that they're talking about already. So I'm just trying to clarify that for the group, knowing this service and watching it, and I just didn't think it made sense to invest a lot in you know, I don't know, these, what they were calling multimodal centers, but turned out to be parking garages, putting a catwalk across, you know, I-275 at West Shore for people to ride a bus in the center of the road. Things like to me, it wasn't TOD, it wasn't valuable at the racetrack dog park area, and it didn't serve people well in that community. And I think that's very much the sentiment here. But also hearing Secretary Gwen talk about commuter rail and how there is support for that, and they get that. And of course, I've been talking about the CSX option. Initially, it was said CSX would take 10 years and this would be 5 years. Turns out this will be at least 10 years. And in Sunrail, they were able to do it in 8 years, but 3 years was contract negotiations that working out a plan with the state that, you know, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So I'm just going to put all that out there. You know, I could go on for a long time with my critique of the RRT, but I won't bother. I appreciate the shift. You know, I still think that any services offered, any support offered on this system should be given directly to HART or PSTA or, you know, in Pasco, not to create another bus system. That doesn't make sense to me as a competitive bus system. So I'll just leave it at that, just kind of some analysis of all this, and appreciate the shift in sentiment, because I think it's, I don't think this would go anywhere otherwise.
Commissioner Flowers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Long, I am going to support what you're putting here on the floor, but I just want to share a few points, salient points. They may be repetitive for some of you, so I do apologize if in fact they are. I believe the whole purpose for regional transportation is to bring individuals the opportunity to be able to access services across county lines. We could sit here and talk all day about what Hillsborough does. PSTA has always provided routes going over to Hillsborough County on the 300X and others to downtown. Even when I served on PSTA for a number of years, that was one of our primary services, to include establishing hubs off of the interstate of the exit for 22nd Avenue, so persons could park, catch the bus and ride. Several components of that dealt with taking cars off of the road, so we're looking at some climate issues. It also addressed individuals' need to find employment in places other than where you live. And we see a number of larger corporations that are expanding their services and their brand, and they're moving further out because why? The property is much less expensive, and they're able to create larger employment hubs and hire. Tampa Bay Times is moving their paper facility out to Lakeland. So those individuals that would normally just travel right into downtown St. Petersburg or off of 34th Street and 13th Avenue will now have to either find a way over to Lakeland or look for employment. So my intent for serving on this committee is to look holistically at how we're providing opportunities for individuals throughout the region, not just Pinellas County. And that region does in fact include Pinellas County, moving up the I-4 corridor, hopefully even going past Hillsborough County, Polk County and Pasco County, because we have to look at employment trends. And we're supposed to be looking at what it will take to keep our communities thriving and growing. And quite frankly, we won't be able to do that if we continue to talk about what we're doing in our individual county and not what we're doing regionally. We have lost so much time because, and I'm not hashing up old stuff, but we had an opportunity for light rail. We lost that opportunity. It put us back years. And so now we're playing catch up to where other communities throughout the United States of America have already excelled. Go look at Salt Lake City. We were there for a National League of Cities conference. Electric rail, fabulous, connecting to commuter lines that took people either east or west and made those stops. And those runs were such that you weren't late to work, you could get somewhere on time, you know, and just be able to do some of those things. So as we talk about whether it is an express bus service, whether it is connecting to commuter hubs, we need to just keep in mind, I would hope, okay, let me not say need, we're all adults. I would hope that our primary focus is this is a organization that's focused on the regional needs, not our individual needs. And that's what we should be doing, representing. Lastly, I think it would be well for us to continue to have those types of conversations with Congress members, Chris Castor, and even to, and Gus Billirakis, Congressman Billirakis, thank you. And even to maybe have conversations with the new Secretary of Transportation, Secretary Buttigieg, because even through those efforts, a regionalization approach is going to be what's required to move us forward. And if we don't do something now, the cost will only escalate down the line and we will find ourselves further and further behind. And we're talking about people who are not making a whole lot of money that would love an opportunity to be able to access employment, that will be able to give them that in districts that aren't coming to our local community. So I just kind of wanted to share that because we don't need to keep rehashing. We need to talk about moving forward. I would love to see us not keep rehashing. I would love to see us talk about moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for those
Well
great
said.
comments. Other members, Commissioner Starkey.
And I would add not only about the regional employment, but I would add regional attractors. The Bucks games, the airport, the Port of Tampa, downtown St. Pete. So it's not only about employment, but it's about having a mobile community that doesn't have to have multiple cars sitting in their garage, but has other methods of family members to move around and our tourists. So it's a whole big picture that I agree, if we don't act, we will slip behind and it'll get more and more expensive. I am going to Salt Lake Friday. Actually, my son's company just bought the town. Well, they're going to finish building that town that rail goes out to. I think it's called Morningside. Yeah. So I know exactly what you're speaking of, and I ride transit everywhere I go when I travel, and I can't do it here. So welcome to the committee. Welcome to the board. I'm very glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Other members, any other comments or questions? Okay, Janet, you made the motion, I believe.
I did, and I'd like to call.
Commissioner, Director Holton, I just have one more comment.
Yes.
I appreciate all the comments that have been made, and I appreciate what Commissioner Flowers said. I just like to clarify that when I talk about a route from downtown St. Pete to the airport in Tampa, that's exactly what the RRT would do. It's not any different. So I am talking about regional routes. When I talk about Tampa to St. Pete or back and forth, it's the exact same thing as our local routes do in the regional area as well. Wesley Chapel to downtown. At this point, the proposal that was there is no different than what I'm talking about and what local service is doing or not doing. So I just want to be clear that there isn't any proposal out there to go from any longer, to go from, St. Pete to, I don't know, Wesley Chapel, or that isn't served, even though they're recognized as regional. I think the conversation's getting a little confused, but maybe we can sort that out in the future. I just want to be clear.
Please call the question.
Yeah, could you restate the motion, please, and then second, so we've been a long time.
Well, my motion is for, how did I say that? Just a second. I wrote it down so I wouldn't be drone on. Okay, my motion is to ask the TBARTA staff and the project team to develop one additional alternative for consideration, namely an update of the 2015 plan that proposed express buses running in express lanes and connecting the 3 counties of Pasco, Hillsborough, and Pinellas. That's my motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Is there a second? Yes, discussion, Mayor Kreisman.
Just a quick question. I want to make sure that includes the staff looking at the convertibility of it.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, Jennifer, could you call the roll, please? Yes.
Cliff Manuel,
Yes.
Commissioner Long,
Yes,
Mayor Kreisman,
Yes.
Rich McLean,
Yes.
Commissioner Kemp,
Yes,
Commissioner Starkey,
Yes.
Commissioner Bellamy,
Yes.
and Commissioner Flowers.
Yes.
Please, yeah.
All of us.
Yes, please, staff, please get that to everyone as soon as possible.
Motion does pass 9-0.
Thank you.